So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting evening. We've got speaking to Ruth Jones about Us Three. She's going to be interviewed by Hannah Beckerman, and without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Hannah and Ruth.
Right, can you hear me now? Yes, good. Sorry about that, technical hitches as we have sometimes with Zoom, but welcome to this very, very special Zoom event. I am thrilled this evening to have with us Ruth Jones, the award-winning screenwriter, producer, actor, and now best-selling novelist. Ruth, as you will all know, starred and co-wrote in the brilliant sitcom Gavin and Stacey, which won the hearts of millions of viewers, as well as a host of awards. Since then, she has starred in an impressively eclectic range of TV dramas, from cutting-edge comedy to period dramas. And in 2018, she published her debut novel, Never Greener, which spent 15 weeks, no less, in the Sunday Times Top 10 bestseller list, including 3 at #1. And last Thursday, she published her new novel, Us Three, which is a glorious celebration of female friendship. And I am delighted to say that it went straight in at #3 after 3 days sales. So we will be talking to Ruth about that. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping about how it's going to work. Ruth and I are going to have a chat. If you have questions at any point for Ruth, please type them in the chat box. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you can see a chat icon. If you click on that, a right-hand box will come up on the side. You just type your message in there, and we will do some questions as we go. So don't wait till the end, just ask a question at any point and we will come to those as we go. But without further ado, let's see and hear from the brilliant, award-winning, best-selling Ruth Jones. Hello, Ruth.
Hello.
Hello.
Coming, bear with me.
Coming.
Here we are. Hooray!
Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, Hannah. How are you?
I'm brilliant, but congratulations. I mean, #3 after 3 days sales, because they only goes from Thursday to Saturday on your first week. So 3 days sales, #3. How does it feel?
Do you know what? I am absolutely over the moon. Seriously, I thought, because obviously there's a lot of competition at the moment, lots of people launching their books, both fiction and non-fiction, which is great for readers, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I think last week, Thursday, there were 596 books published in the UK. So yeah. Just to put it in context.
Exactly. So I was just thinking, flipping heck, if I can get into the top 20, I'll be over the moon. To get into the top 10 was just beyond. And then to get to #3, I mean, just heavenly. I'm not in the least bit expecting to go any higher. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This is great for me. #3, Us Three is at 3.
Well, exactly. It sort of feels perfect, doesn't it? You've got like Lana, Katrin and Judith, your 3 protagonists. It's about 3 best friends. It feels absolutely fitting that that's where you should go in the charts. So the book only did come out last Thursday. I suspect some of your devoted fans may have read it already, but for those who haven't, can you just tell us a little bit about the story?
For sure. So as you mentioned, the characters, is the 3 main characters, 3 Welsh girls called Katrin, Judith and Lana, and they become best friends like from the first day of school. And when they're 8, they swear on a curly whirly wrapper that they will always be there for each other, come what may. And as time goes by, when they're a little older, something happens that challenges this hitherto beautiful equilateral triangle. And it's really all about whether friendship can withstand the test of time and the challenges that life throws at us.
And actually, I mean, you follow them. We first meet them when they're 18 and they've just finished their A-levels and they're going off on this holiday post A-levels, girls' holiday to Greece together, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you follow them all the way through to the brink of their 50th birthdays. So we see them over kind of 4 decades. Why did you want to write a book about female friendship over a kind of long period of time?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's because I am lucky enough to have female friendships that have lasted that long. I mean, I've known one of my friends since we were 8, so I'm nearly 54 now, so that's, do the maths, I'm not very good at maths. 6 years, is it 46? Yeah, 46 years. And then my other close friends also I've known since I was, you know, a bit older, like a teenager in secondary school. So, and these friendships mean a huge amount to me. I dedicated the book to my bold and beautiful bad weather friends, because they are there. They're not just fair weather, they are bad weather. They're there in the good times and the bad. And I really do love the fact that we have been on this journey together in our lives. We have been through, you know, what probably were to us at the time massive dramas, like splitting up with your first boyfriend, or passing or not passing your O-levels, as they were known then, back in the olden days, passing your driving test, going off to uni, getting pregnant, getting married, getting divorced, being bereaved, all of these milestones that most of us go through. It's a blessing to know the same people throughout that journey. And for me, my closest friends were at my 18th birthday party and at my dad's funeral. So I thought it was a really rich arena in which to set a story, inspired by the friendships that I'm very blessed to have.
And so, as you were writing this, how much were you drawing on your own experiences? I mean, if I had known you for 40 years, are there things that I would recognise in here?
Yes, I think, I mean, I shamelessly stole stories from friends, as well as putting my own experiences in there. Obviously, I should say that the 3 girls who are fictitious are as different as chalk, cheese and chocolate. And we have Judith, who is the kind of the slightly more reserved, bit more cynical one. We have Katrin, who's a little bit more flighty, a little bit more innocent, I guess, a bit more naive. And then there's Lana, who is the would-be actress, who is the wild child of the 3 of them. So obviously there are things that I know about being an actress and about going to drama school. Katrin becomes a GP and she goes to Cardiff, to medical school in Cardiff, which is what my sister did. So I was able to get a lot of info from my sister. And even, you know, Judith works in the civil service, and I asked my friend stepmom, who works in the civil service, to give me some insight into that. So there are elements that I took from real life, but essentially the story and what happens to them is fictionalized. There's a story in there that I won't give away too much, but it involves somebody being conned by a fraudster, and this unfortunately did happen in reality to a friend of mine. So there are stories in there. There's also a time when Lana is interviewed by a tabloid journalist for a TV show that she's doing, and that was based a bit on one of my experiences.
Would the journalist in question know who they were if they read the book?
Probably if they read the draft of my book, they would. But then I decided to change the name because I thought, I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is annoy the press, or the tabloid press. You don't want to make an enemy of them.
Ideally not in publication week. But as I say, we follow these girls from 18 to sort of 49. What was the draw of having that kind of structure? Because it's a long time to follow your characters. Yes,
and if I'm perfectly honest, well, there's 2 things. One, I think, is maybe a sense of naivety on my part, that I just think, I can just write a story that covers 4 decades, rather than just going, well, no, why don't you just concentrate on a 2-week period, or a summer, or a winter? But I wasn't really able to do that, and I think that's maybe due to my inexperience as a novelist. I don't know, because obviously Never Greener did span a lengthy time. However, I also really am a nostalgia freak, and I love the fact that, you know, I don't know, probably like a lot of people in lockdown, I did a lot of sorting out, and I went through the attic, got out loads of boxes of old letters and photographs, and went down memory lane, which was a very long lane when you've got you know, the whole floor is just covered in photographs, where you have to decide what you're going to chuck out and all that kind of thing. But it did make me, it gives you like a little window into the past. So I was able to read letters from friends of mine, say my friend Kerry, who was an au pair in America when she was 18, and I'd forgotten that she'd done that, you know, and getting a letter from her where she's describing what's going on for her at that time, or a letter from my friend Nicola when she was like 13, and she was she'd gone away to a different school then. And it's just, I think I just love that idea of, you know, we hopefully get a certain amount of time on this earth, you know, the old 70 years if we're lucky, and I don't know, I just like the idea of being able to revisit certain points in our life journeys.
And I mean, as you say, it is a challenging chunk of time as a novelist to visit people at 3 different points in their life over 40 years. What did you find those creative challenges to be?
Well, the book is written in 3 parts. So it's the 80s, and then we go to 2005, I think, and then we go to more or less the present day. Originally, I didn't have a middle part. I just had the 80s and then went to sort of the present day. And it just felt rushed, because I think with the first part, a lot of that was about their journey, them going away. They originally, I mean, at the moment they go island hopping, and they go in Greece, and then they go to well, I won't give away too much, but originally I had the journey be much longer, and I had them go interrailing, and I hadn't even finished part 1, and I'd like almost written a full length novel. So I had to really sit down with my brilliant editor, Frankie Gray at Transworld, and she was very kind and just said, should we have a little look at this? But she was brilliant, and I was able to do a lot of cutting out, which I think served the novel well, actually, and I'm glad I did it in the end.
And so you've written this wonderful, I mean, it is just such a celebration of female friendship.
Oh, thank you.
As you know, I loved it. I can say it again and again and again, but I did love it.
Oh.
As you know, I think I've read it 3 times now. But did you learn anything about yourself as a friend in writing this book?
Well, one of the things I thought was very, very true to life, and probably is something that I have myself felt, is that, you know, there is a point at which, I won't say who, but one of the characters has a falling out with another character, and she decides that that's it, that actually they've outgrown their friendship anyway, so what does it matter? They, you know, they were friends once, but now they're not anymore. And when she thinks about this friend, she just thinks, well, actually, there's not really, we don't have anything in common anyway. And then she gets, she has some communication from the friend who she's fallen out with, and everything changes. And she suddenly launched back into how she used to feel about this friend all those years ago. And I think that in itself is a testament to the strength of friendship. I mean, I love that saying. They say friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And you can have different friendships. You can have friends that you make through work, and it might be a very short-lived but intense friendship. Certainly that's happened to me with acting jobs, where I've become really good friends, very close friends with people on acting jobs, and then maybe lost touch with them, not because of any animosity, but it's just happened that way. But the friendship was in itself was a healthy one. And similarly, I might become friends with somebody for a reason. We often get drawn to people that we might not become friends with for the most bizarre reasons. And then there's the lifetime friends. So I think it's certainly made me look at my friendships. I mean, my close friends are people I've known since school, and it's different as you get older to make new friends. I think that's a different experience altogether. I don't really have what I would call celebrity friends. I've got celebrity acquaintances.
But all your best friends are still people that you have known for a long time, who've known you pre you becoming famous.
Absolutely. And I'm not knocking that. I'm truly not knocking, because a lot of people I do know have got close friendships with people who they have known through being in a show together or whatever. And that's great. But I think it just happens naturally. You're naturally drawn to somebody, and there's no hard or fast rule to it, really.
Yeah. You alluded earlier to the fact that Judith, Katrin and Lara go on a summer holiday together, post A-levels. And they have this very, I think it's fair to say, eventful holiday. There's romances, there's betrayals, there's family revelations. I mean, it's a very heady experience. And I wonder why you think sort of those late teenage, early 20s holidays are often so heady and so eventful and so kind of emotionally heightened.
Well, I think it's a lot to do with the freedom that you get given. I mean, I went on my first holiday with my friends when I was 15, actually. We went camping in Cornwall. I know.
That's really young.
When I think about my 15-year-old niece now, if my sister told me that she was going off camp, I'd be horrified. And then when we were 16, we went to Spain. It was, and then I think by the time I was 17, I used to go to youth theatre a lot in the summer, so I didn't really go on a lot of friendship holidays. And I think by the time I was 18, when I was Lana and Judith and Katrin's age, I had a boyfriend, and I went to Paris with him. I was very grown up.
Well, that's so sophisticated.
Yes, exactly. But I think it's that headiness of being free, and to an extent having a certain amount of responsibility. I mean, gosh, when I think back to that holiday in Spain, we used to have our traveller's checks, and we'd go and cash our traveller's checks, and you didn't have ATMs back then.
And no mobile phones, so you couldn't keep in contact with home. You didn't have your mum texting you every 5 minutes saying, "Are you safe?"
Exactly. And that's why I've got one of the girls, Katrin, who has the most overprotective parents. They insist that she brings home every week. I had a whole chapter actually, which is gone, where there were a list of rules that Liz and Hugh Kelly, Katrin's parents, had, which I love. I mean, I love those two characters. I'll just give you a little insight into what they're like when they're going to the airport. So Hugh and Liz are taking them to the airport to go to Greece. And Hugh says, then they're discussing somebody they know who's had a heart attack, and they're saying, well, they don't look like somebody that would normally have a heart attack, and they're not overweight particularly, and they're talking about diet, and Liz, the mum, she starts talking about the benefits of different diets, and she goes on about the F plan, which was very, very popular back in the 80s, the F plan diet. It was all wholemeal pasta and wholemeal bread and all this kind of thing.
It's fair to say it's not a diet most people today would go on to lose weight.
No, exactly. She says, she's talking about, she says to Hugh, she says, Hugh, I'm telling you, it's baked potatoes morning, noon and night, and the woman lost 3.5 stone. And I love that about them. And I did have a bit in the chapter, in one of the chapters, where they give Katrin a list of rules that she must follow when she's abroad. And it's things like, don't have your hair cut. Like they had an idea she shouldn't have a haircut when she's abroad. And there was another one, I think it was something like, don't borrow anyone else's shoes.
But we're talking about Hugh and Liz, and actually particularly Hugh's relationship with Katrin. One of the things that you do beautifully in the book is you focus quite a lot on father-daughter relationships. So we have Hugh and Katrin, and we have Judith and her stepdad George, and those relationships are they're beautifully portrayed in the book. They're really tender, they're very emotional, they're very warm, and I wondered why it was important to you to be portraying that father-daughter relationship, and why you wanted to.
Well, we have, I know you might want to talk about this later, but we have a mother-daughter relationship in there that's very toxic, and so I wanted to show different iterations, is that a right word, of parenting. So I mentioned Liz and Hugh Kelly as these overprotective, quite extreme, reactive, melodramatic parents. And Hugh, who is essentially the first character we meet in the book, he just, he talks about his precious cargo, and if anything happens to his daughter, he will just die. And I just love exploring that whole father-daughter love. I mean, I was very blessed to have a lovely relationship with my dad. I was probably quite hard work when I was a teenager, and I used to argue with him quite a bit then. But I certainly became quite a daddy's girl. Not that I don't get on with my mum. I do get on very well with my mum, but there's something about a sort of a father-daughter relationship, I think, that's very special. So I suppose I wanted to see elements of that in my book. So there's certainly elements of my dad in Hugh. My dad would have definitely, like, Hugh buys Katrin a money belt to wear. And that's the sort of thing my dad would have done, definitely. But we also have George in there, who is Judith's dad, albeit her adopted. He's her stepdad, and there's something really gentle about that relationship, especially as Judith has a very bad relationship with her mum. So yeah, and I mean, the one, if I have a regret about the novel, it's that I just didn't have the time and space to properly explore Lana's relationship with her dad. I mean, we sort of look at it in terms of when she goes to drama school, she gets into a sort of a performance art class where she has to examine her own experiences and put them into her performance. And we find out a bit there about how she was an only child for a certain amount of time, and then her mum died, and her father went on to marry someone else, and she ended up having 4 sisters. And that, although she was always very loved, she always felt a bit pushed out. So it's probably my pop psychology explaining why she turns out the way she does.
But let's not say too much, because we don't want to give anything away about Lana and what happens to her on her trajectory. Yeah. But you said about Judith and George and the fact that's a step-parent relationship. And step-parents traditionally in literature have a very rum deal. In fairy tales, the stepmother is always evil. Even in contemporary films and books, often the step-parent wants to get the stepkids off the scene at best, and obliterated at worst. You have been a step-parent for 20 odd years, and I wondered whether part of writing such a warm, celebratory portrayal of a step-parent relationship was part of you wanted to kind of redress that balance and say, actually, some of us are really nice.
Yeah, I think possibly there's a lot of truth in that. I think more so than ever now, parent, step parents and extended families, blended families are just completely. I think there are more blended families than what are they, nuclear? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Nuclear families. So it's so much part of our life now, and it's a tricky one to navigate in some ways. I have friends who have stepchildren, and of course it depends on when you become a step parent. How do you choose to be? Do you choose to be a parent or a friend or a mixture of both? And it's all essentially comes down to respecting the kids, I guess, and having boundaries. But I mean, I'm no expert on it. It's just that's all I know. I don't know about being a biological mum. I just know about being a stepmom. And it's been a very rewarding experience for me, and I get very emotional when I think about my stepchildren, even though they're not children anymore. They're like 32 and 34 and 36. And I hope that I think that, rather than it being a negative in somebody's life, that it's an addition, an enriching addition to have a step parent or a stepchild. So yeah.
Well, you do it so beautifully in the book. The relationship between Judith and her stepdad is just wonderful. The relationship between Judith and her mum, as you have just hinted at, is not so wonderful. It's quite a malign character. She's very manipulative. She's quite coercively controlling. She can be really awful. And you do it brilliantly, because I was enraged many times reading this book about her behaviour. But I wonder why you wanted to represent such a kind of toxic relationship between a mother and daughter, and also how you got inside it so viscerally.
Well, I think the awful characters, as in awful human beings, are really interesting to write. And this character, the mum, her name is Patricia. She is narcissistic and highly manipulative. She gaslights. She's really a real mother. What's that? She's a real work. But she's very interesting. She's funny and she's sexy, and you can't really help but like her, I think, in a way that perhaps, like, say, my character of Kate in Never Greener, she was quite a madam, but I think she perhaps didn't have the comedy that Patricia has. So I wanted her in there to counteract the men and the father relationships, I suppose, and also she's got a really good story, which, although she's a fictitious character, the thing that happens to her is something that happened to a friend of mine, and so I wanted to get that out there, really.
Well, that's very teasing of you. I'll have to go and read the book to find out. Yeah. But what struck me, and what one of my takeaways from the book is inextricably linked with the family we come from, and that includes like the extended family that we choose to have around ourselves. And I wondered if that was true for you too. Is your identity very much tied in with your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like when I go home, and I don't know if it's because of being Welsh. I don't know if this happens to anybody, wherever they come from, but I think I revert, but my accent becomes much stronger when I go home. I feel a huge sense of belonging when I go back. I mean, my mum still lives in the house that we all grew up in.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always happen, because you hear about people downsizing, which is a very sensible thing to do. But my mum just couldn't face. I just couldn't bear it. Not even, I don't think emotionally. I do think it is an emotional thing for her, really, but just to sort of, have to do all the sorting out. So it's lovely to have that sense of place to go back to. And also just being in my hometown. My sister still lives there. My brothers still live there. And there are friends, one of my best friends still lives in my hometown. So I think, everybody, it's horses for courses, but for me, where I come from is it's not even so much that I feel like this pride. I mean, I just feel that I've got a place. I come from somewhere, I feel like I'm rooted somewhere, and the people are inspiring, and the characters and the stories, and I love the fact that my family still lives there, and that we can talk about people, who we've known for years, and they're still around. So yeah, it is important.
And if the subject of this book is friendship, then for me the theme is kind of betrayal and forgiveness. There are multiple iterations of betrayal and forgiveness in this book, and I wondered why that was something that you felt you wanted to explore.
Well, I think there's no such thing as there as a perfect human being. Everybody is fallible, and it's those fallibilities that make us who we are and make us interesting. And yeah, I think, I don't know, I just wanted to see to have moral dilemmas. I think that's basically what it comes down to, is when you're faced with a moral dilemma, what your choice, what you decide, which route you decide to take, which part of the fork in the road you choose to go down, is important. And moral dilemmas in drama are really exciting. So I think betrayal is always a good one, especially if you've fallen in love with the characters and then they behave badly. You don't want them to behave badly, but when they do, you want to see how they're going to react.
Yeah. And you want them to redeem themselves, don't you?
Yeah.
You are invested in them and redeeming themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Which is what I think I tried to do with Never Greener, actually, with Kate. A lot of people just would not forgive her. A lot of people who read Never Greener said, no, can't forgive her. But a lot of people did. A lot of people did they did think that she redeemed herself in the end.
Yeah. And in fact, you could say the same about Patricia in this novel.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's very true, because she is so awful. But it's her comedy. It's her comedy that helps redeem her in a way that perhaps Kate in Never Greener. Kate wasn't particularly a funny character, I don't think.
No, she was quite earnest.
Yes. Yeah.
Quite intense. But I mean, talking about comedy, I mean, one of the things that I love about this novel and about your work in general, whether it's TV or fiction writing, is that, obviously TV is fiction writing as well, the books, is that you are completely unafraid to tackle quite a lot of meaty issues. I mean, in this book we have addiction and alcoholism and grief and betrayal and loss, and toxic relationships with parents, but there is always this sense of warmth, and there is always a sense of kind of hope as well. And I wonder how you manage to achieve that balance, to tackle all those things, but it never feels like a heavy novel. It always still feels like a warm, comforting, safe place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose because there aren't really any baddies. There's no, I don't think I particularly in the screen stuff I've written as well, I don't think I ever have any really awful baddies. I think they've all got a warmth to them. They've all got a heart to them. And then dealing with those issues, I think, again, I don't think they're done in a particularly heavy-handed way. Like, for example, there is a sequence where one of the characters wakes up with a terrible hangover and is like desperately trying to remember what she did the night before. Now, I could have written that in a sort of awful, angst-ridden way, where she just, you know, is so full of self-loathing, and you know, and Red kind of had done a bit of a character assassination on her. But instead I chose to go down the more comedic route. And it's funny, I was talking today about Behind the Scenes at the Museum with Kate Atkinson, which is one of my favourite novels. And I think she does that, where she handles really quite tragic situations. Like there's a scene where the main character, Ruby Lennox, walks in on her father, who is obviously having sex with a waitress at a wedding, and he dies. He has a heart attack. And rather than that being, you know, which obviously is a very serious and dramatic scene, there's some black comedy in it, because she, you know, the waitress says, do you know who this man is? And she's like, yes, my dad. Then her mum comes in and it's the same thing. She said, I don't know what's happened to him. Do you know who he is? And she's, yes, it's my husband. And it's a very farcical. So I think hopefully I try and portray situations that are essentially sad and tragic, but with a lightness of touch, if that's the right way to.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about the main characters, about Lana and Judith and Katrin. We've talked a lot about their parents, but actually this is a book that has a rich cast of characters. I mean, I don't know if you counted how many are in there, but there's a lot of characters in this book.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I kind of felt like I would have happily had a whole novel on any of your secondary characters. They're all so beautifully drawn, and they all have their own stories. And it made me think about kind of Gavin and Stacey, and about Stella, and ensemble pieces are what you often seem to be drawn to. And I wonder why you are drawn to writing those ensemble pieces.
Yeah, I think I always start with character, right? I always, I remember with Stella, for example, I've still got the first page that I wrote down, and it just had Stella written in the middle in a circle, and then I just had 3 kids, and there was this boyfriend who she was in love with when she was 16, and that was kind of it. And it was starting from there, working out who Stella was. And so I didn't really know what the drama was going to be. It was just about the character. And I think that's why, you know, I, as an actor, in the earlier days of my acting career, I had, you know, one scene. I remember being in a scene with Judi Dench in that sitcom, what was it, From May to September, in East is East. I suppose I had a little bit more to do in East is East, but in Emma, the film with Gwyneth Paltrow, I had literally a line and a look. Now,
what was the line and what was the look?
I think the line was simply, good morning, Miss Woodhouse, please come in. And that, in fact, I had 2 lines, and Gwyneth Paltrow, I remember can you imagine what this was like for me? This was the first time I'd done a film. I was with Gwyneth Paltrow, who at the time was going out with Brad Pitt. It was a proper, like, full-on movie, filming down in Dorset. I had these 2 lines, and I had to open the cottage door and say, good morning, Miss Woodhouse, please come in, and let her in. And she said to the director, does she really need to say all that? Can't she just open the door? And, you know, it's really, your heart breaks.
Yeah, it's your one line.
It's like, yeah, it was my line. And I think I managed to keep one of the lines. I think I just said something like, good morning, Miss Woodhouse. You know, so it's, to me, those one-liners, and we certainly had a lot in Gavin and Stacey, they're really, really important. There is no such thing as a small part, but it's important that those lines, for me anyway, it's important that they're not just serving a purpose to, you know, forward the plot. They have to earn their place there and have some sort of a characteristic to them. So I love those characters. I mean, one of my favourite minor characters in Us Three is the Catholic priest, Father O'Leary, who actually is pretty much in there all the way through. And he was inspired by a real life priest that I encountered at a funeral, which was awkward because my sister and I had gone to this funeral together, and he just had the most, his accent just seemed wrong somehow. I mean, don't wish to, I'm not judging him for having a Cardiff accent, but he had a really strong Cardiff accent, and he spoke very, very fast, and it was very rapid, and it was very staccato. And he said, "Oh, welcome. I'm not sad today. I'll tell you why I'm not sad. Because the Lord is up there, and he's got his arms open. He's welcoming Malcolm into the fold. So I'm not sad. Malcolm's gone to the Lord." And I just loved it. And my sister, she turned to me and she said, "He sounds more like he's going to like sort out your U-bend rather than welcoming you into the family of Christ." He did. He was more like a Cardiff plumber than a man of the cloth. But so it's characters like that I love. I mean, you just can't, and especially setting it in Wales, because I set Nevergreen in Scotland, really. But having being able to draw on Welsh characteristics, the whole extreme reactions to things, and the melodrama, and I mean, it's just it's joyous. It's joyous, actually.
It's really interesting the way you talk about your secondary characters, because there's that line, isn't there, about writing that nobody is a secondary character in their own life, so why would they want to be like a secondary character in your novel?
That's so true, yeah.
And you absolutely have the sense with your writing, which is really hard, so hard to pull off, that all of these people have their own stories. But obviously, Catherine and Judith and Lana are the central characters, and because we follow them for so long, we feel really intimately connected with their lives. I mean, I felt like I knew them, and there were certainly moments between Judith and Patricia where I felt very protective of her. I kind of wanted to stage an intervention and help sort it all out.
Yeah.
But obviously that's just me reading it in, however many evenings. You've spent 2 years with these characters. How hard is it for you to let them go at the end?
Oh, I really miss them. I mean, especially I spent not the summer just gone, but in fact, was it even last summer? Oh gosh.
Yeah, last summer.
Last summer, I was writing sort of solidly, like doing the first draft, and I really felt like I knew them. I really did feel like I knew them. And it's funny though, because somebody else asked me this, like, do you feel like, you write at the end and then you send that's gone? But as you know, Hannah, because you're a novelist, it's not as straightforward as that, because you send your first draft in and then you'll get notes back from your editor, so then you revisit the book. But I suppose there's something very special about sending in that first draft, or certainly sending in the second draft, I think, when you've done a lot of work on it. I mean, I feel like I've been on quite a journey with this one, more so than Nevergreener, really. Like, for example, I said that the book is in 3 parts, and the middle part I wrote in the first person, and because I think I sent you that draft. I think you read that, and I remember my editor saying, Frankie, saying the same thing, that it just doesn't quite work. But sometimes you have to try things, and what that served for me was it helped me to get inside their minds more. And I think I wrote it in the first person and in the present tense, so completely changed it. But it was valuable. I mean, none of it stayed in. And in fact, when I then had to go and do another pass on the whole book, I kept finding the wrong tense still hanging on in there. But it was good. It was a good thing to do.
Ruth, I have loads of stuff that I could continue talking to you about, but we do have some questions that I am gonna come to now. So Stuart Gaunt asks, did you know where you wanted to take the characters when you started to write the novel, or did the plot evolve as you were writing it? It's something that writers talk a lot about, isn't it? It's like, are you a planner and a plotter, and do you have everything set out at the beginning, you know exactly where it's going, or do you start with an idea or a character and just see where it takes you?
No, I don't think I'm not really a planner and a plotter. I think I I let the characters come to life. It's really important for me that the characters are very, very well rounded, and I let them take me on the journey. But maybe, maybe my next novel, maybe I'll approach it differently. Maybe I will not go for such a broad spectrum, a broad scale of time, and maybe I will plan and plot. I don't know.
Maybe your next novel will be 24 hours.
Exactly. Well, I just read that fantastic Rosamund Lepton novel, 3 hours, which is set over 3 hours, and that was like, oh gosh, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Now, talking of whether you're going to do your next novel as a 24-hour conceit piece, somebody who's just called Clapham 1994 asks, will there be a third novel?
Yes, Clapham, there will. I've got an idea for something. I mean, I had an idea a while back, and then it just didn't sit properly with me. So and then I got inspired by something during lockdown, actually. So I suppose you can't really, well, I can't plan when I'm going to get inspired. I think maybe that's because I write novels and do other writing. Maybe if I was just writing novels, I would get into more of a system with it. But yes, I have got a third novel on the way. I mean, I've actually got a deal to do 2 more novels, so there'll be a 4th at some point.
You've got an idea for the third?
Yes.
And Clapham 1994 also asks, Nevergreener's story started on TV script. Where did the story of us 3 come from? I mean, I'm guessing that's sort of from your own friendships, really.
Yeah, and I think when I was saying that, I thought the arena of that friendship is great, and having in-jokes and a shared history and a shared code of reference is all really, really important. But what happens if you change that balance? That's what where the story was going to come from, really. I suppose that's where it came from. But it was a very different process, right? Us 3 getting the story, because Nevergreener the story was already created for that, although it did change a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, so because Nevergreener had started as a screenplay kind of years before, hadn't it? And in fact, Emma asked, what was the inspiration? She said she loved the first book, has just received a copy of Us 3 today, can't wait to read it in parentheses. Was there any inspiration for your first book, for Nevergreener?
Oh, well, that was inspired by, I don't know whether people remember this, but there was a thing, it was a precursor to Facebook, and it was called Friends Reunited. And a lot of people were getting in touch with old friends, but also getting in touch with old boyfriends and girlfriends and people that they'd had relationships with in school. So, you'd have somebody that would get in touch with little Johnny Davis, thinking, oh, I should have married little Johnny Davis instead of Bill Thompson, and kind of fantasizing about the fact that they went through the wrong door. So it was sort of from that's what inspired Nevergreener, was because for those people who haven't read it, it's about a 22-year-old who has an affair with a married man when he is like he's 39, she's 22, and it ends quite badly, and then they meet up again 17 years later, and it's whether they should really walk away from each other. But
yes, they should.
Yeah.
But of course that wouldn't be much of a novel, would it?
No.
Joe asks, do you find yourself thinking of how the story would look on screen as a TV series when you are writing the books?
No, I don't actually, because I think that would be quite limiting in a way. I think you need to be committed to the medium in which you're writing, and I think it works both ways, because obviously I have turned a screenplay into a novel, but I certainly wouldn't be writing a screenplay thinking, oh, I wonder how this will work if I made it into a novel. Because I think it just gets confusing for you then, because you sort of try and tick too many boxes rather than staying true to that medium. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So then we go on to Jane. Oh no, I haven't finished her question actually. Jo says, but if it was on screen, which character would you play?
So for us three?
In us three, yes.
Well, you know, I'd love to play Patricia. I would love to play the mum.
That would be, it would be a lot of fun playing Patricia, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think Julia Davis would do a better job of it than me, though.
Or she would do Malevolent brilliantly for that book, wouldn't she?
The beautiful smile.
Yeah. Yes. I'm just finding another one. You are this band. Would you consider? Oh, you're obviously good at doing long periods of time because you've just done Never Greener. Would you ever think of doing a book series?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I did actually have an idea for a sequel to Never Greener, because a lot of people asked me. They said, "Is Us Three? Is that a sequel to Never Greener?" I was like, "Oh no, it's completely different." But that did get me thinking, and I haven't ruled it out. But then I don't think I could do a series for Never Greener, and I think for that you'd need, you know, what works well for a series is something like obviously a detective series, and then they always get turned into TV series, don't they?
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, like Agatha Christie and Miss Marple and all those kind of characters work really well as a series. But I don't know if I'm not sure if I would get a lot of satisfaction from that. If I'm honest, I don't think it's my strong point.
And even though you didn't write obviously these books with a TV adaptation in mind, would you like to see a TV adaptation of either of them? And are there any plans to do a TV adaptation of either of them?
There aren't any plans. I mean, this sounds like terribly ungrateful of me to say this, but I want to sort of enjoy the novel, the fact that it's a novel. And it's almost like, it's a bit like with Gavin and Stacey, when people, you know, we did the Christmas special and people go, "Oh, you're going to do any more?" And I would say, shall we just enjoy this one for now, you know? And so it's funny, isn't it? I suppose it's just the world in which we live, that we are used to adaptations and books get adapted all the time. But that's just because we can, you know, we can adapt them. But I quite like holding on to the purity of the novel form and the fact that it is it's a novel, and I'm just celebrating that at the moment.
There it is, yeah. And we should say, I mean, people will know if they've got their copies already, but it's so strokeable. I mean, it's a lovely cover, isn't it? I mean, it's very tactile. It's a lovely, lovely strokeable finish.
I can't get a sense of the feel of it.
But it's sort of super soft, isn't it? It's lovely.
It's very comforting.
So comforting. I've got to ask this question because I just love it. Ellie says, how do you think the people of Ponte would have coped with lockdown?
Well, Auntie Brenda would have been in full PPE. A gas mask, everything. She would have been, but what would have been lovely is that they would have all looked out for each other. I think they would have all helped each other, but there would have been probably a few illegal get-togethers. Yeah.
Melissa asks whether you have ever been surprised by a character during the process of writing a book. Have they ever done something you weren't expecting them to do?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm sure it has happened to me. I can't think of any examples at the moment, but yeah, I think that makes it more it does make it enjoyable if you suddenly go, oh, what if? You know, I found when I was telling, I think it was Ben Miller, when we were doing the Tesco ads, and I was telling him the story of Never Greener, and I did find myself going, yeah, but then she does this, and then this happens. He's like, no! And I'm like, yes! And there is something enjoyable about that.
About surprising your reader, if not yourself, all the time necessarily.
Yes. Oh, surprising the reader.
Yeah.
Yes, because I love, there is something that happens in Us Three, which I've had people who have read it have had this same reaction, and they've gone, oh my God, I did not see that coming. And that gives me so much satisfaction.
Yeah.
It does.
Yes. I think I probably know which bit you're talking about. There are a few more questions, but I don't want to keep you for too long today, because I know you've had like the longest of long days.
It was such a long day.
You started on the rain at 9 o'clock this morning, and I don't think you've had an hour where you haven't been being interviewed by somebody. I'm amazed you're still talking. But I mean, you've talked about there being another novel already in the planning. What about TV projects? Are there any more of those on the cards?
Yes, I'm co-writing 3 projects at the moment, and they are, 2 of them certainly are at quite good stages, but it's a long old process with TV, I have to say. So yeah, and lockdown was quite fruitful with those, but none of them are Gavin and Stacey, I should say.
I wasn't going to ask. I know you've been asked a million times in the last 9 months. But are they things for you to star in? Are they things for you?
Well, certainly one of them would be, and the other 2 I would be in it, but probably not the lead character.
Okay, intriguing. Watch the space, clearly. And you have already achieved so much that most of us will never achieve. 2 best-selling novels, one of which only came out 3 days ago, award-winning TV shows. Are there any unfulfilled ambitions that you still have?
Well, I would like to write a film script, definitely. And I don't know when that will be. I'd love to, I don't know. I've had a little taster of being in a Welsh language drama. Like, I had to do it for this challenge that I did. I think, and it was just it was in the soap Pobl y Cwm, which is the Welsh Welsh language Coronation Street. And I, as part of a challenge that I was doing for this Welsh learning program, I had to be in a scene. Now, I was playing myself, so if I had to be in a scene in something where I was playing myself in English, I guess that would be quite weird in itself. But I had to speak in Welsh, but as myself, and I found it so challenging. So it'd be quite interesting to do a character in a different language and to get those nuances. Because your brain, it works on a completely different level. And there's a lot of dramas that are happening in Wales that they call it filming it back to back, where they do the scene in English and then they do it in Welsh, vice versa. So yeah, I would like to do that. And on a personal level, I would like to. There are places I'd like to visit. Certainly, I'd love to go to Alaska. And I'd love to go to Malaysia as well, and see more of India, because I've been to the south and the north, but I haven't really been over to the east coast of India. So yeah, travel, and I'd like to run again. I'd like to learn to run again, because I used to run and I don't do it anymore.
And there are lots of words that are often used about your work, whether it's your TV work or your novels, warmth and humour and uplifting. What is it that you want people to take away from your work and from Us Three in particular?
Well, given what we've all been going through to different degrees over the past 6 months, I would just love people to find my novel to be a place of comfort and cheer. It's a COVID-free zone. There's no mention of COVID in Us Three. there is a great deal of warmth in there, and friendship and companionship. And a friend of mine is reading it, and she paid me the biggest compliment. She said, I don't want it to come to an end. I go to bed at night and I'm trying to ration myself, because I just want to be in their world. I want to spend time in their world. And that to me is a huge compliment. If it makes people feel better, then that's a good day's work, really.
Well, it is. I mean, you have 100% achieved that. I mean, it is absolutely the feel-good novel that everybody needs in their life right now. I loved it, and I hope that everybody who reads it, who is watching this now, loves it as much as I did. Thank you so much for being here tonight on what, as I said, has been an insanely busy day for you. It's been such a joy to have you here and to hear you talk, and to hear you talk so entertainingly and candidly about your writing and the book, and to get an insight into your brilliantly creative mind. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's been a joy. I mean, I always love chatting to you, and it's been brilliant. I really loved it, and thank you to you. And I'm going to have a quick see if I can click on, but I can't. I would have thought I'd seen all the participants, but I can't see them. But I'm waving at you. And thank you all for coming, and thank you to those of you who bought the book, and to those of you who haven't, I hope you might be persuaded.
And on that note, we will head back over to Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you,
Hannah.
Well, thank you both. What a brilliant evening. Absolutely fascinating. So insightful, finding out all about your characters and your writing. Such a fun time. Thank you. And everyone will be pleased to know that those that haven't got the book, they can get signed copies from the Chorleywood and Gerrards Cross bookshops. And of course, we have Christmas coming. So what better present for your girlfriends? Plenty of copies left. And I wish you all the success with the book. And let's hope the sales continue to grow. And thank you so much for your time, Ruth. Really generous of you. Thank you. And thank you, Hannah, for guiding us through this evening. So if we were in a hall, a big round of applause for you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.